And change management, scope management is definitely one of the big issues that come up, and I think we could probably all agree we could spend a week talking about it and still have some opposing views and opinions on how it should be dealt with. But some of the things that we've noticed is that you know, the best approach, and this is incorporated in some of the industry best practices literature that you'll read, but the best approach is don't perform the work until the proper authorization has been granted. And I know everybody's kind of looking sideways when we say that, because the reality is the work's completed before it's even approved when it comes to changes. And we recognize that they're large-scale jobs, they're tight timelines, there's a huge number of complexities out there on the job site, and you can't stop productivity just to get a piece of paper signed. So when the reality is that the work's completed before it's approved, our recommendation, and we strongly recommend it, is to report all of the work, whether it's been approved, whether it's pending, or even if the work's been rejected. And I'm going to come back to this point in a later slide, but you can't properly measure productivity or performance. You can't properly update the schedule if hours are being left off of the reports. And the other recommendation that we strongly suggest is document. So when additional requests that are maybe outside the additional scope of work come across your desk, you document everything that pertains to that. You keep the change management log, as you can see in our bullet points, and you make sure as much as possible that there's no ambiguity in the verbiage or the wording, because that can come back to definitely haunt the contractor and the owner in some cases. One of the lessons that I learned the hard way was that there's much more to scope management than perhaps meets the eye. And I didn't necessarily understand this when I first started, but there's definitely the scope of actual work that's being performed, but there's also the scope or the terms of the contract. And even if something's being performed within the initial scope of work, if it involves a new piece of equipment or a new classification, if it's not specifically identified in the contract, then it's a change to the scope. And so operations may be directing you out in the field. They may even be signing off timesheets, signing off the work that's being performed. But we have to recognize that contract administration is the one that ensures work conforms to the terms of the contract, as they're responsible. Their overall responsibility is for controlling the change management process. And you can't just perform the work. You also need to adhere to the contract and follow the change management process if you hope to get that work performed or approved. So I made a point earlier about report everything, whether it's approved or pending or even if it's rejecting. And why do you report everything? There's express contractual provision and implied contractual provision. So obviously express is that the provisions are plainly written in the text of the contract, and then the implied provisions are that there's a long-standing or commonly held understanding in both the customs and practice of the industry or from past decisions of the court. So you really want to avoid disputes at the end of the job, and understand that the more you document, the more you communicate, the less likely it is that you're going to get into a spot where you're disputing work at once the job is complete. So reporting the work arguably provides contractual notice. If you file it in a folder under your desk or in a filing cabinet, it's really no help to anyone. So field level approval provides acceptance of the work performed, but from a contract perspective, there are potentially still many details that need to be addressed. And again, one of the things that I learned maybe the hard way was realizing that the work isn't necessarily being, the fact that it's being performed isn't being disputed, but rather the question is, was it performed in accordance with the contract, and was the change management process followed properly? If the work was completed before it was approved, the chances are that the owner's contract management team doesn't even know about it yet either. So if you're sending partial information over without the proper documentation or sign-off, it's no wonder that it's going to get sent back. So managing the approval process, like I mentioned, it's multidimensional. There's more to it than just approving the work that's been done. It's also approving the classifications. Have they been recognized and approved on the contract? Has the coding structure been approved? Have the rates also been approved? So again, from a project admin, contract admin perspective, you need to recognize that perhaps the operational people are approving the work, that it's been performed, but then the contract admin's job is to make sure that the rates are accurate, that the classifications are correct, and that it's been coded to the proper cost codes and work breakdown structure within the job. Again, this is something we've all heard before, but it takes a tremendous amount of effort and diligence to build trust, and it can all be wiped out quite easily. So again, we really encourage that open and honest communication between owner and contractor, and the more information that you can provide, whether it's 100% accurate or 80% accurate, at least you've got some information that you can collectively work on and improve accuracy and timeliness. So one of the things that we wanted to quickly talk about today was just where does DTC fit into this picture? And where we see ourselves is the platform that enables contractors and owners to import that work breakdown structure from the estimate, from the schedule, collect actuals against the plan, so that we're all speaking the same language. Again, if you have multiple schedules or multiple work breakdown structures, it's very difficult to get a single version of the truth where we're able to import that work breakdown structure and make sure everybody's coding actual hours, actual equipment, actual material to the schedule. We're also able to submit that information electronically to your job costing or payroll system, so that you don't need to be rekeying the data. And it also helps ensure that everyone and all the systems stay in sync, so that you're not dealing with a huge manual reconciliation process at any particular point throughout the job. A little bit of a busy slide, but in addition to mirroring the work breakdown structure, DTC also allows owners and contractors to automate the terms of the contract. You can set up the different classifications, the effective dates, the rates associated with those classifications for straight time, overtime, double time, for travel or living out allowances. And you can also see at the bottom, we have the same structure for equipment for classifications and effective dates, and setting up the approved rates. So when it comes to managing the approval process, it's maybe not typical, but we've definitely seen again where some contractors don't have the systems in place to track the work if it's not approved, if it's pending, or if it's been rejected. We did an audit of a job site once, and we found $5.5 million worth of timesheets that had been stuffed into a desk drawer or a filing cabinet because the project admin people didn't know what to do with the timesheets, because the codes hadn't been approved or set up in their financial systems yet. Of course, the hours were entered, they were summarized in a spreadsheet and entered into payroll so that the guys got paid, but the owner was completely unaware of the hours and costs that had been accumulated, and you can imagine was quite surprised when we brought it to their attention.